Well, guys, after numerous requests and many praises, it is finally time for me to review what most people are calling the show of the summer. Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be a review that has been a long time, and I mean a long time coming, because all throughout the summer, I've gotten so many requests and so many comments to review this show, and I was going to review it. I was going to review the first episode, and I never did, but anyway, let me just get into it. The thing I'm going to be reviewing is actually not a TV series, it is a mini-series, but most people are calling it the best series of the summer, and that is the mini-series, the HBO mini-series, The Night of. This is something that I meant to review from the first episode, and I just never got to it. Other things got in the way, life and things like that just got in the way, and I wasn't able to review it. And I've gotten so many comments all throughout the summer, where the hell are your reviews The Night of? Why aren't you watching The Night of? What's going on with The Night of? And like I told you guys, I wanted to binge the entire thing. I figured this is a mini-series. There's only 8 episodes. It sounded like something that's just kind of meant to be binged, and that's what I decided to do. I decided I was going to binge the whole thing. There was a point where I'm like, okay, maybe I'll watch the first 3 episodes and then I'll review the rest, but I just didn't want to do that. I felt like I should review it as a mini-series, and like I said, I didn't really know, honestly, too much going into this show because I tried to stay away from plots and things. I only knew it was kind of like a mystery show. That's really the only thing I knew about it. But that being said, after watching The Night of, do I agree with all the complaints? Oh, hell yes. I mean, not only is The Night of one of HBO's best series in a long time, it is by far the best miniseries I have seen in so long. It is also by far, I think, the best new show of the summer, definitely. I mean, I can't really call it a new show because it's a mini-series, but that, which I will say, guys, if this show does get a season 2, right now it says Night of mini-series review, but if it gets season 2, I'll say Night of season 1 review. I'll just do what I did with Wayward Pines. But anyway, let's get into the show because I really do want to talk about this show. I mean, this is a show that I really got invested in, very quickly hooked me in, and I loved pretty much every second of it, but let's just get into it. Basically a plot of The Night of, if you guys have not been watching it, which I think there are some people who aren't watching the show, which is disappointing. If you guys don't have HBO and things like that, you do what you need to do, get HBO now, find a way to watch it because it's so worth seeing. But anyway, let's get to the plot of The Night of. Basically, the plot of The Night of is we focus on our main character, Nazir, or as he likes to be called, Naz Khan. He is a typical college, Muslim, basically. He goes to a college, and he's a very kind kid. Everyone really seems to love him. He has a lot of friends. He has very supportive parents, and one night he's invited to go to this party, but he's also kind of an outsider a little bit. He's not really the coolest kid in school. He's more like the nerdy kind. He's very focused on his studies, and one day he is invited to go to this college party, and he gets into this taxi cab, but he ends up ditching the college party when he meets this girl, Andrea, and Andrea and him, they start to talk, and Andrea eventually gets him corrupted with tons of drugs, and he just ends up having this crazy night where they do drugs. She's doing something weird with this knife thing, and make a long story short, they do end up having sex, and the next night, the next day, he wakes up, and she is covered in blood, most likely dead. He doesn't know what happened. He very quickly is, going to the police, and he very quickly finds himself being the prime suspect in Andrew's case, and the rest of the show is, could he have done it? What could have led him to do it? And he basically is pulled into a very dark world of crime and deception, and that basically is the plot of The Night of in a nutshell. There's a lot more going on with the show besides that, but that's the best way I can sum it up. And the plot of the show in general, I mean, it's awesome. I love the plot of this show, but I can't really tell you what the show is really about because that's really, we'll get into spoiler territory, which, by the way, guys, I'm going to review this like I review a movie. I'll talk about, the acting and things like that, and then I'll get to spoilers. Mainly, I'll talk about spoilers for, the last 2 episodes, but let's get to the cast overall because that's something I definitely do want to talk about. Now, without a doubt, this is by far one of the best casts I have seen on a show in a while, honestly. I think you have a lot of names here who are very well recognized, but some who haven't done stuff in a while, and that's something I really do love. Now, let's first talk about John Turturro, because he is the titular, main lead here. He gets top billing and everything, and John Turturro absolutely kills it in this role as John Stone. I love the character of John Stone for many reasons. I mean, first of all, he just really gives it all in this performance, but also because you really sympathize with John Stone. John Stone is not your typical attorney. This is a guy that really doesn't have a lot of experience. He's kind of the guy that's the attorney, but he's always rejected. He's walking around prisons at night, just begging to get some sort of case, and he gets involved in Naz's case, and he makes it kind of like his own personal mission to help Naz and defend him, and I thought that was interesting that we saw that. But he's also suffering from very bad eczema, which, if you don't know what eczema is, it's when you get this really bad, swelling on your skin. Well, he has it on his feet, and because of this, everyone's kind of turned off by him. No one really wants to talk to him because they're worried it's very contagious, and he has to wear gloves and things like that. So he's going through his own personal struggle, but at the same time, he's trying to help Naz, and he just dominated every scene he was in. I think he did an incredible job. I love what John Turturro did on the show. I really sympathize with his character, and he definitely was one of the best things here. I thought that he was just fantastic, and he was one of those kind of characters that every scene he had, he just dominated. He did an incredible job with. He had some great dark humor as well, but he also, I think, worked very well with everyone. Really love what he did here, and he really was fantastic. But as good as John Turturro is, and as much as I liked his character, he's not my favorite in the show. By far, my favorite character in this entire show, and the best actor, is Riz Ahmed as Naz, because this kid is a star. I have to say, this guy is going to go really far. You might not hear the name Riz Ahmed before. You most likely will after you see this, because he really is incredible in this show. There's so many great things about Naz's character that I love, and I think he just portrayed it perfectly, because one of the best things about Naz as a character is that, like I said, he is very innocent. But once you get into that world of prison, things start to change for him. Naz becomes a little bit more not as tentative. He becomes a little bit less shy, and especially once the gang starts to accept him, they really coerce Naz into doing some things that he probably would not have done otherwise if he was not in the prison world, and that's something I think they just did so well. I think he absolutely killed in this role. I really did love his character, and throughout the entire show, you're really not sure if this kid is actually capable of doing something like this. But the thing is, there's never a point where you're like, no, there's no way he could do it, and you really do go back and forth on whether or not he did throughout the whole thing, and it's a very hard trait to display. I mean, something I'm gonna compare it to Cuba Gooding Jr. as Sim in American Crime Story, because that's something where we know that he was guilty, we know that he did it, and we know that he was let off. But here, this is an original story. This isn't something that's based off a case or anything, so having someone like Naz, it could be a hard character to describe, but I think he did a very good job with us really getting behind his character, really understanding him, and really sympathizing with him as well. Even though he is someone who could have committed this murder, we're with him the whole time. We totally understand what he's going through. We understand what's happening to him. I mean, this kid very quickly is pulling into some stuff that I think he really wish he wouldn't be pulled into, and I really think he did a great job at really exploring this character, how tragic his character ends up becoming, and he absolutely slayed in this role. I really love what he did here, and he really, like I said, if you hadn't heard him before, he is definitely going to get an Emmy next year. There is no way I don't see that happening, and if he doesn't, I'm going to be very surprised if he does not get some sort of recognition or some sort of accolade for this performance, because he really killed it. And the chemistry between him and John Turturro, I think, is one of the vocal points of the show, because they're very type of similar characters. Now, I'll get more into that when we get into the spoilers, but I really love what both these characters did. I thought they both were very well done. But they're not the only characters I want to talk about, because the other character I want to talk about is Michael K. Williams, who I am so happy is back on HBO. I love the character of Chalky. He was one of my most favorite characters in the Boardwalk Empire, especially, of course, spoiler alert, when he died on that show. I really thought that he was just an incredible character, and I love what he did there. And I love his character here too as Friday Night, because this is the first person that really is like to Naz, okay, I'm going to help you, because he knows, of course, of all the crazy stuff that goes on within the prison. He can tell that Naz is not like the other guys, and he basically says that he's going to protect him. But in order to do that, like I said, he coerces Naz into doing all these things. But you understand why Freddy is this way, and the relation between Freddy and Naz is very interesting. I like the way that it was done. I thought they both did a very good job, and I thought, and especially when you get to Freddy, you're thinking, oh, he's going to get Nas into, like, drugs and things like that, but no, he's actually there to be kind of a teacher to Nas, and I thought it was interesting that we saw that, teach him how to deal with the violent ways, and just how to prepare him in life. I thought it was very interesting. You can tell Freddy is very experienced, he's probably been there for a very long time, and he's really starting to reflect at Rikers, and I really did love his character, thought he did a great job. Like I said, great to see him back on TV. Bill Camp in the show, I also really love the character of Dennis Box, because this Box is someone who is kind of outnumbered. I mean, he's a detective, and he's someone that is convinced that Nas didn't do it. The second he hears about Nas, he's like, there's no way this guy did it, and he's doing whatever he can to find leads. It's not so much like Stone, where he's making his own personal mission, but he is kind of alone. You know, he doesn't really have anyone. It seems that he doesn't really have a life outside of this, and you definitely do see that, and you really do sympathize with his character in that regard, and I thought he did a great job as well. And then Janine Berlin, I thought was also fantastic as Helen Wise, this district attorney who's also working on his case. I thought she did a really good job. And the way that she, you know, was kind of doubting what's going on with him, but also, of course, she's not doubting. I thought she was really great. I think probably the most surprising performance in the show, though, is Nas's parents, because I did not expect Nas's parents to play the role that they do in the show. They're in almost every episode, and they have such a substantial role throughout this entire thing, and it makes perfect sense why they did that. I mean, these are two parents that really are kind of breaking very quickly. You definitely see. I mean, they're coming to this conclusion that, holy shit, our son, who seems perfect and who seems like the perfect son and who cares about us so much and who's doing so well in school and has all these friends, he actually could be a murderer. And them just coming to that conclusion, I thought was just fantastic. I think both of them gave great performances. Payman, Maadi, but especially Poorna Jagannathan. Sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong, but especially her. She absolutely killed it. There is this one scene in episode 7 where she's all alone. She barely has any dialogue in the show. Mind you, both of them don't really have many scenes of dialogue, but it's their reactions and the way they feel throughout the show. I mean, these are totally actors that act with their eyes and not just with their mouth, and I think they did an incredible job. I love what they did here, and I think they gave them a lot more to do than I expected, but it was so welcoming because that I really love what they did here, and I think they were one of many of the actors here that I really did love. Really, everyone virtually across the board is great. I could talk about this cast all day. I think everyone really did a great job. I don't want to talk about everyone all day, but I think everyone really was fantastic here, and they really did a fantastic job in this show. So I think the acting was great. Let's talk about the directing here, because the show is created exclusively by Steven Zaillian and James Marsh. Now, I don't think I've heard of them before. I feel like they've done stuff before, but I don't really think I've heard the name Richard Price and Steven. Actually, they did The Wire, if you guys know that. They did the show The Wire, which is a very popular anthology series. Most people said it jump-started the anthology craziness we have now, but they did an incredible job directing the tone of the show, because this is not a show that is ultra dark. It is very dark at points, but what I love about the most is that it's extremely realistic. Everything going on in this show, you understand why it's going on the way it is. You understand why the tone is the way it is, and it never went too crazy. It's kind of a low-key show at points, and I was honestly kind of surprised with that. I was expecting all the praise to be this crazy thing, and don't get me wrong, there is definitely some crazy stuff that happens in this show, but it's very realistic and very low-key and very much shows the way that this would work if this case would actually be going on, and that's something I loved about the script with this show. The script for this show, the writing is just so smart, and I really think that, I mean, you can definitely tell they did their research here. They really did do their homework when it comes to the way the criminal justice system works. They really did their homework with the way prison life works, and they also really did their homework, I think, with the way just a murder trial works, and that's something I thought they did a very good job with. I mean, there's some things that are talked about in the show that I didn't think were going to be talked about in great as detail as they were, such as how important a murder trial is and how different that is from any other trial in jail. It's this great scene between Freddy and Nas where Freddy tells him that him being a murderer makes him that much worse, even though he is someone that, he is someone that is innocent, seemingly innocent, and didn't really do anything. He's still claiming to be, he still claimed to be the murderer, and that's a lot worse than what he did, and I thought scenes like that were just really interesting. The relationships between these characters I thought were very interesting as well, because they're all kind of similar. They're all just kind of trying to find answers, and they want to know what's going on, and they really don't really know if this kid could actually do something like this. And I thought that was definitely very interesting the way that was done. I really did love the story. I got so into the story, and I love that everyone really had their own reason for being on this case, and everyone had some kind of motivation. It never really felt like these characters were just one notes. I mean, you had characters like Box, for example, who could have been just very one note, and he wasn't that at all. He was so much more interesting. They did so much more of this character than I thought, and they really go into the psyche of all of these characters, and that's something I really did love, especially with a character like, Stone, where they really showed you not just Stone in the case, but also what Stone's doing in his private life, and how that really echoes what's going on in the case, and why he's really so focused on the case. I thought that was something they did very well. I really loved the way that was crafted, and that's something that I thought was really, really well done here. I really did love everything about the writing. I really could just go on and on about the writing, but again, I don't want to talk too much until we get to spoilers. That's really when I want to get into stuff more. The cinematography here is just, I mean, the visuals on this show are just amazing. I mean, this is one of those shows where they have these deep metaphors for something like a cat and what the cat symbolizes, or something like, for example, Stone's feet condition. I mean, all of that stuff, really, it's there for a reason, and they pay such great attention and detail on the show, and I really do love it, like scratches on a desk and things like that. I thought that stuff was just really well done. I really did love that, and I love just all the visual stuff. I thought really puts you into that world. This is one of those shows that it really puts you into into the show. You don't just feel like you're, watching the show. You really feel like you're a character, because you're as stumped as these characters are. You want answers as much as they do, and you get so invested in the story, and that's something I think they did so well. This is a very easy show to get invested in. It's a very easy show, I think, to start making up theories about, and I think that's something they did very well. I really did love that. I thought the visuals were just incredible here, especially in the prison scenes, which were just so well done, and kind of different than other depictions I've seen of prison. I mean, it's very different than Orange is the New Black. I did kind of get that vibe from it, but it is a men's prison, and it's definitely different from that, and it's not quite what you're used to seeing. Like, it's not just, someone doing drugs or prison rape. I can't really remember there being a lot of prison rape on the show, which I'm glad they did, because again, they never went full, they never went ridiculous with the show. They never went off the rails, and I thought that was something they did very well. It remained very contained, very simple, and that's something I definitely really did love about the show. It's complex, but when I mean simple, I mean it stayed as, Nas, and I thought that was definitely something interesting that they did. The score here also is fantastic. I thought the score and the music choices were just really good. Not a ton of music choice, obviously, because it's HBO, but I think when they did it very well. I definitely really did love that, and I also really did love the editing on the show. The show always flew by for me. Even the first episode, which is 90 minutes long, may I add you, flew by. Like, I could not believe when it was over. I was into every episode. There wasn't a single episode I didn't like. Episode 6 was a bit slow, I will say that. That's really my only complaint, was that episode 6 was a bit slow. But other than that, I mean, every episode really flew by for me. I was into it the whole time, and there really was never a point where I found myself getting taken out of the story for any reason. I mean, there are some things I think people could complain about, but I'll talk about in the spoilers why they weren't really complaints for me, and I definitely really did love everything about the editing. I think the show is edited fantastically. I love the way it was done, and there really are just some incredible scenes in the show, and I really do want to talk about them. So in order for me to go on and on about the show and really talk about why I loved it as much as I did, I really do want to get into spoilers. Now, I'm not going to spoil, obviously, every single key detail that happens in the show. I'm going to talk about the main things. I'm mainly going to talk about the finale, because there's a lot to talk about there. There's a lot I really loved about the finale, and I really want to talk about the way it was done, because I think it's going to be very controversial. I think it already kind of is. I'm already hearing a lot of mixed reception about it, and I want to give you guys my genuine, honest thoughts in it, and to be as honest as possible, I need to talk about spoilers. So if you guys have not seen Knife, do not watch the rest of this review. I swear to God, you really do not want to watch the rest of this review, because if you do, I mean, it's fine. Please just check out the show. Please check it out. I know some people might get turned off by it, but I think you definitely should check it out. It's definitely worth your time, and go watch it, then come back and watch the rest of my review. But let's just get into the spoilers, because like I said, there is a lot of stuff to talk about. First thing I want to talk about is, I think, the transformation that Nas undergoes, because that's one of the most interesting things about this entire thing to me, because Nas to me seemed like he was going to be just like the good guy, and I really wasn't a huge fan. I'm like, are they really just going to make him the good guy that does nothing wrong? I really thought that's what he was going to be, and I'm glad that in the end they didn't do that. This is a kid that he becomes so much darker in prison, and the more confident he gets, the more darker he gets, and the more willing he is to do some irrational things, like he get like the tattoos or the shaving of his head, which that shocked me. When Nas shaved his head, I was shocked. The way that he was completely just going against, like, his haircut, things like that, and the way that he was changing his personality in general, like, like smuggling drugs and things like that. But of course, we have to talk about the two, I think, most significant things he does that just show that his character, that the old Nas is gone. There are two very key things I think they did very well, and I really do want to talk about them. First of all, let's talk about Chandra, because a lot of people talked about the scene between him and Chandra, and I want to talk about why that scene, for me, wasn't a problem. I know a lot of people did have a problem with that scene. The reason it worked so well for me is because of the fact that it really did seem like she was someone that was easily manipulated. She wasn't really experienced. She wasn't really used to all of this deception and things like that. She wasn't really used to it. She hadn't really been into this. In fact, she wasn't even really a lawyer. She was, of course, forced to be a lawyer because her actual lawyer quit because she realized that, it was kind of that Nas was a hopeless case. And her getting more into Nas and her kissing him, I think was her just realizing, that we saw that she's willing to do anything he tells her to do, and she'll go to very extreme measures. And when she has the picture of his head, I think it's her kind of reminding herself that, holy shit, I could be kissing a killer right now. I don't think it was her thinking this is what Nas did to Andrea. I think it's her thinking I could be, getting close to a killer, and I could end up just like Andrea did if he is a killer, and that's why she backed off. And that, to me, worked very well. I did like that in the end that she was caught. I like that she didn't get away with this, and that's something the show does very well, is that every action has a consequence. Every character that does something bad, they are detained for it, or they are fired. I mean, Box, for example, we know, he retires from this case, and that's understandable because Box wasn't really getting anywhere. Like I said, no one was really on his side. He was really one of the only ones that believed that Nas was guilty, wasn't guilty throughout, and I thought that was interesting that we saw that. But then, of course, the biggest thing that Nas did is when he gets Freddy, he realizes that there is this man out there that he's prostituting himself, and this other guy committed suicide, and the man that was prostituting himself, he ends up going to Freddy. Freddy literally slits the guy's throat, and Nas, of course, was involved, and that was the moment where Nas Khan was gone. I mean, this is not the Nas Khan that we've known for the past 7 episodes, but it makes sense. It really does show that because he's grown more confident, and because he's grown to be, people are more accepting, he's willing to cross that line. He's willing to do more rational things, and I think they showed that very well. I really did love everything they did with that, and that was something I thought was very well shown here. So now let's get into the finale, because damn is there a lot to talk about. This finale for me is one of the most perfect finales I've seen in a while, and I know a lot of people are upset with the lack of closure, but I feel like that's the point, and I'm going to talk about that. But first of all the courtroom scenes were so, thrilling, and I was on the edge of my seat throughout pretty much every scene, specifically the scene between Helen and Nas, where she goes to Nas, and she's just asking him all these things that he probably didn't ask, and made him feel more guilty than ever, where she's saying, why didn't you call the police? Why didn't you think she would, how did you not know she was dead? I mean, these are things that really, they are kind of common sense, but Nas is someone, again, who wasn't used to that stuff. As he said, he only was with one girl before Andrea. He wasn't really into drugs and things like that. He's not someone that goes to frat houses and parties every day. That's not who Nas is. He's very much, like I said, a goal-oriented guy. He was someone that had a whole future ahead of him, and he never really thought about these things. He just figured that she was dead, and there really wasn't anything he thought that he could do about it. And I thought that was just such a great scene. I love the way that scene was done. And this is really when Nas starts to think that maybe I am a killer. And I love throughout the entire show that he's so doubtful of himself. He doesn't remember anything. I mean, when someone asks him if he killed Andrea, he says, I don't know. And I love that his response is, I don't know, because he doesn't remember it. And I'm gonna say right now, I don't think he did it, and it's pretty obvious why. I mean, he wouldn't just black out the entire thing, but also because, of course, there was no blood on him, as we know. There was no blood on him, and because of there being no blood on him, I think that very much shows he didn't do it. But anyway, let's go back to the trial, because the trial ends up in this way, where I love the way that the trial's set up, because everyone's kind of thinking different things. You have Stone, who, like I said, is 100% willing to prove, will do anything in his power to make sure that Nas is innocent, because he wants to prove to everyone that I can do something. Even though I have this condition, even though everyone gives me these weird looks and thinks that I am this helpless old man who has this emphysema, and I'm in this, terrible position, he is willing to do whatever he can to help Nas and make sure that he is, he is as safe as possible and that he is not guilty. He will do whatever he can, especially when he's trying to make the mistrial happen, because he's willing to do whatever he can there. Helen, on the other hand, is kind of think that maybe he did do it, the way that he's not really answering any of her questions. I mean, obviously she's very suspicious about that, so she's someone that is thinking that he did it. Then you have Box, who finds this new lead, this guy that, Stone was in contact with, and this guy that was related to Andrea, but he's not telling him anything. So this immediately makes Box think that, maybe this guy could be it. And that's something I thought was very interesting. So then when we get to the jury, it's completely deadlocked. They have no idea what to do. And that makes perfect sense, because why? This kid really is not an open book. He's not someone that's willing to say, if he did it or not. He's not someone that's willing to admit if this could actually, if he could have actually done something like this. He's someone that's very unsure of if he actually committed this said crime, and I thought that was very well done the way they did that. So they do go to a deadlock, and I think just something they did so well here is even characters like the judge, you really understood their motive here. Someone like the judge, this is someone that doesn't like it when he isn't getting his own way. He did want to get his own way. He wanted to make sure that this trial was completed and that they could just end this thing, because he's tired of not having any answers. But in the end, Helen doesn't call for a retrial. She says that, all right, we're done here. We're not getting anywhere. We clearly can't figure out if he did or not. The jury is deadlocked. I think it's pretty much safe to say that we're done here, and Nas gets off with us not knowing if he's guilty or not. Like I said, I'm willing to bet that he didn't do it just because of those things that I said. I don't think that he could have done something if there wasn't, like I said, blood on him, the weapon, things like that. I mean, the weapon had blood on it, but just the fact that Nas didn't have any blood on him, I think that's enough an indication to show that I don't really think that he did do it. And I think someone definitely does show that. But really what I love about the end of this finale is that the show was never about did Nas do it. It's more about the man himself, and that really goes with every character. Someone like Stone and Nas, I mean, those two characters, like I said, are very similar, and I don't think that's ever more present than in that scene where they're sitting on opposite ends of the table, both of their lives kind of destroyed. Stone realizing that he had all this potential and that he could have been this very successful attorney. When he's on that bus and he sees that logo and he just thinks of how much of a fraud he thinks he really is, because he really can't get anything done. And even though the jury was deadlocked, and I think he's kind of willing to take credit for it, he knows deep down that he didn't really succeed, and he really did want to succeed. In the end, he didn't. He's not going to take credit for it because Stone's just not that kind of guy. But then you have that scene with Nas where he's with his family and he's at the dinner table, and you have his mom, who very much doesn't trust her son. She kind of is under the assumption that she could be harboring a killer in her house. Then you have the whole fact that Nas is walking down the street, no one wants to interact with him, and even the scene where Stone says, no one cares about you. I mean, yeah, it's true. Now that Nas is no longer a suspect, no one cares. I mean, it's done. No one seems to care about him. His life pretty much is over. It really is. All the future he had, everything that he wanted, it's gone, and it's sad, but that's really very realistic, and it's a very dark way to end it, but I think it makes sense why they did that. And then you have that scene. What I love about that scene between Nas and Stone the most is not because you realize how similar they were. It's the scene where you see that guy. He walks into that place, and like I said, Nas said everyone is staring at him. But Nas looks at him, and I think he's thinking in that scene, this is who I could have been. If I didn't go with that girl and I went to that party, this is who I could have been. I could have been very successful. I could have made something of myself. I could have actually had a successful future. But it's any, chance of that is ruined. And it's just a really horrifying scene, honestly. It's very sad to think that this kid had such a life ahead of him, and he's pretty much completely fucked over now. It really does suck. But then you have Stone, who his condition is worse. It's not actually better, and you had this hope in the 7th episode that maybe things were going to get better. He had that prescription drug and everything. You were thinking that maybe things actually would get better for him, but it's the complete opposite. His foot condition is even worse. It's starting to spread even more, and it's crazy the way that was done, but really it's getting so much worse. And I don't think that what I love about the eczema is that it's not just there because he has it. It's there to really symbolize how broken Stone is. I mean, like I said, everyone feels that Stone is a helpless man. Everyone feels he can't do anything on his own, and that just shows, I think, how broken Stone really was when he's itching all over and realizing that, oh my god, this is coming back, and oh my god, it's getting worse, where he has to put on gloves and he can't even shake someone's hand. I mean, he himself, I think, is starting to feel hopeless. He's starting to feel crumbled, but he's still a good man, and that's shown in that scene where he did keep the cat. He took the cat from that shelter and he brought it back because in the end he does have some shred of humanity in him. He's not completely heartless, and that's something I thought they showed very well with Stone. Nas isn't either. Nas definitely is not completely heartless, but he's not the man that we knew, obviously. This is someone that, like I said, could be a criminal, and everyone's now going to look at him differently. I mean, if you're there, anytime he looks up his name, all that's going to come up is, this whole trial and everything. He's never going to be able to get away from it, and just like Stone is never going to be able to get away from this, the condition that he has. He's never going to get away from that. We definitely do see that, and like I said, it's a very bleak and dark ending, but I think it's very satisfying for this. I think it definitely makes sense why they went into this direction, because everyone really does get what they deserve. And am I saying that Stone deserves this? No. I think Stone just wants to make something of himself, and I think us seeing that he does take the call at the end, he is going to continue what he's doing. Maybe this guy will be the one that is guilty. Maybe they actually will find a suspect. Maybe they will close this case, or maybe it'll just be one of many unsolved cases in a history book that you read. Maybe it's never going to be solved, but that's not really the point here. The point is, life is going on, and our characters' lives are always going to be affected by the fact that they'll never know if he's not guilty or not, and they're going to have to face everyone and say, we don't know if he actually is. If anyone brings up the name Nas Khan, they'll never know. I mean, they probably won't care about him as much, but you got to think this guy's going to be talked about, and I think that was a very well done way to end it. I really did love that. I think it was a very fitting end for the show, and I think it was as perfect as a show really could get. I wasn't looking for answers. I honestly don't want to know who killed Andrea. I don't think that was the point of the show. Like I said, I think the point of the show really was to show all the characters and how this really affects them, and that's something I think works so well with the show. I love the way that was done. A very fitting end to a very realistic show that I thought was just perfectly executed and just done in the best way possible. Of is incredible. I loved everything about the show. I think the show by far is one of HBO's best things, and something else I didn't talk about that I really did love is that they were able to tell this story in 8 episodes. I was a bit worried, honestly, because True Detective had this problem last year where they weren't able to craft a full story in 8 episodes, and it completely fell apart, as we knew. The thing is, this kept it very simple. It focused on one kid. It didn't focus on other suspects. Well, towards the end it did, but it only focused on one possible suspect, and could he have actually done it, and show his descent into darkness. And I thought that was something they did very well, and between just the amazing characters, which every single one of these characters, I mean, were just so interesting. They all were so thought-provoking, and there were so many great deep symbolism, and just, it was so obvious what they were doing, and I really did love that. There was nothing where I was ever confused with this show, but it's also a show where you are going to ask a lot of questions, and I love that most of them do end up unanswered, and I thought that was really well done. That's something the show did very well, and between the amazing characters and the amazing story and just everything really combined, The Night Of by far is one of HBO's best shows, and without a doubt, I am definitely going to give The Night Of a 5 out of 5 or an A+. Guys, if you haven't seen this, you need to check this out right now. I mean, this show is so worth the binge. I honestly recommend you binge it because it's so much better if you binge it, not having to wait a week for the next episode, and I really did love that I was able to binge it. I think it's so interesting. I think it gets into this guy's head so well. I think it really does show the way the criminal justice system works. I think it really does show the way even the human brain works, and also shows the struggles that people have in life, and also shows that some things in life are just not answered, and I really did love the way that was done. I think it is so worth watching. I think it is by far one of the best things I've seen all summer, and highly recommend it to everyone, and definitely something that is definitely worth checking out. And even if you're not a fan of these kind of shows, I think you'll still really love the show. It's very different than any other type of criminal show I've seen in a while, but that's one of the reasons why it's so great, and that's one of the reasons why I think it was as good as it is. Now, the other big question, of course, is this show going to get a season 2? I don't think so. I honestly don't want it to. I don't want to see the show turn into an anthology series. I think it works much better as a mini-series. I know that it is based on a British show that was an anthology series, but that doesn't, not all American shows have to be exactly like the British show, and that's something I liked about The Night Of, is that it felt like its own separate story, and it's one of the best adaptations, I think, of a British show we've ever had. I've never heard of Criminal Justice. I mean, I'm sure it's good, but I think this definitely was a lot better. But anyways, guys, in my review, The Night Of, very happy to have finally reviewed this. Like I said, I'm making my top 10 summer shows, and I could not make that list without including the show. I knew that it would just feel completely incomplete if I had not, watched this show and binged it and then reviewed for you guys. I knew you guys wanted me to. I knew the appeal this show had, and I knew that I just had to watch it, and finally I did. Hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know what you guys thought of this show. If you have seen it, love to hear your thoughts on it. What did you think of the way it ended? What did you think of the characters? What did you think of just everything that went on? I'd love to hear your thoughts about. And I will see you guys. That's in my review. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which, guys, finally, the video I'm sure you guys have been waiting for is finally happening, which are going to be my top 10 shows of the summer. I will finally be putting that out. That'll be my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.